Everybody. It's really nice to be here. Here's an important question for you that sooner or later you're going to have to respond to. Whether it's what happens at work or getting a place to live or generally functioning in society, we are people of free will. But the question becomes, are we free? Especially if you've traveled outside of this country, it's hard often to appreciate the magnificence of what I call our individual rights DNA. Without it, freedom is just a word. Granted, we have civil rights laws. That's actually what I do. The truth is that even our civil rights laws in this country have not been passed, were not enacted, without something dramatic. In fact, the only reason one of our civil rights laws was passed was as a direct consequence of the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King on April 4th of 1968. And as a result of that assassination, legislation which guaranteed freedom and had been bottled up in committee rocketed through both houses of Congress and was hand-carried and signed by President Lyndon Johnson on the 11th of April, 1 week after the murder. Our civil rights history in this country is unique, and it is special. Some say that freedom isn't free because you need to use these laws, and indeed, it is quite true. But today I want to talk to you about freedom of the mind, and that doesn't cost you anything. And let me explain what I mean. Freedom of the mind brings personal success. Now, is personal success money? Is freedom money? I know a personal injury lawyer who is so successful, he's got his own ambulance. But money doesn't guarantee happiness. Another friend of mine, his life ambition was to wear a mask and take other people's money. But unfortunately, he never became a surgeon. Is money that important? No. How about perspective? Avoiding a distorted perspective. I was keynoting a human rights conference in Las Vegas, and when the story came out the next day in the newspaper, they also did a story juxtaposed next to mine, a human rights conference, and it was a story about George Burns, who was an actor, and at the time he was 99 years old. 99 years old. And the media found out that George Burns was dating a woman who was 39. Got a picture? So the reporter says to George Burns, George, look, you're 99 years old, and you're dating someone who was 39. Aren't you concerned about a heart attack? And he says, hey, look, if she dies, she dies. So it's a matter of perspective. Stay away from perverted, distorted views of things. Stay away from spin. I face spin every day in my work. It reminds me that I had a client named Jim. And Jim was bragging to me. He goes, Avery, I'm very smart. I'm very smart. Why, I was valedictorian. And I go, hey, Jim, you were homeschooled. It's all spin. When it comes to freedom, my best point of reference was what happened in Montgomery, Alabama, back in the 1950s. In fact, I did a human rights conference down there, and I said, when I arrived, I said, please take me to the place here in Montgomery that is the centerpiece of what Montgomery is known for, because I knew we were going to go to see Rosa Parks and where that bus was. And they were all excited, and they're driving me in the car, and I'm in a cemetery. I mean, no kidding. And I'm going, what? They took me to the grave of Hank Williams. I never understood that. But in any event, the key figure in the civil rights movement was a woman who was a seamstress. And she worked all day and was trying to get on a bus, and they had, back in Montgomery, back in the 1950s, authority figures. And the law was that if you were an American who was black, you sat in the back of the public transportation. The authority figure was the bus driver. For some of the more senior people attending, it was like Ralph Cramden. The bus driver is the authority figure. And frankly, she's tired. She just wanted to sit down. But she really sat down in order to stand up for her rights. And the way I see it, Rosa Parks had freedom of the mind. Was she trying to accomplish something grander? I don't know. But she threw off the shackles to let the bell of liberty ring. And that changed how America did things in terms of access to public facilities for Americans who were not white. It was an act of personal courage, a demarcation in life, an unanticipated but necessary step in the path to freedom. But everybody here faces a variation on that theme sooner or later in your life. We limit our own choices, which we would otherwise be free to exercise if only we had the personal courage to do it. And everybody on various degrees has a Rosa Parks moment. There's some biblical scholars who once wrote, quote, "So oftentimes it happens that we live our lives in chains and never even knew we had the key." Well, actually, I don't think it was a biblical scholar at all. Dr. Gates talked about music. I think that was the Eagles in Take It Easy. But there's an author, Laura Di Stefano, who wrote the book Wither, and she said it best, quote, "Tell freedom, I said hello." Freedom is free, it's a matter of the mind. And here's a stark example of how in one person, freedom was made clear. A friend of mine who retired not too long ago as chair of the NAACP, the National Board, tells a story of his great-grandfather who was a slave in America. Though recently out of slavery, he took all that he had, a steer, and with a rope took it to Berea College, used it as tuition. And he was asked to give the commencement address. It has application today. Freedom isn't free? Well, this is what this former American slave said, quote, "The pessimist from his corner looks out upon the world of wickedness and sin, and blinded by all that is good or hopeful in the condition and progress of the human race, bewails the present state of affairs and predicts woeful things for all the future. In every storm, he beholds a destructive storm, and in every flash of lightning, an omen of evil, and in every shadow that falls across his path, a lurking foe. But he forgets that the clouds also bring life and hope, that lightning purifies the atmosphere, and shadow and darkness prepare for sunshine and growth. And hardships and adversity nerve the race as the individual for greater efforts and grander victories. Greater efforts and grander victories," end quote. Using that spirit, that language of a former American slave, we can start that freedom of the mind today. Achieving freedom derives from fundamental personal values, also something to do with the college that we are all associated with, or many of us are. Achieving freedom comes from your expression, the voice you have to do good things for good people. And freedom is staying away from the distorted perversions, the spin that you hear, and using your mind to distinguish between the nonsense, the perversion, the distortion, and truth. And finally, your vision, how you see those values, how you work them in the vision of what transpires. So let's reach for grander efforts. Let's reach for greater victories. Greater efforts, greater victories for you, for the aspirations that you have that will translate well beyond your lifetime to your descendants in time. Thanks for letting me be with you.